What time is it? Oh, it's 3:30. All right, so welcome to the Events and Commemorations Committee meeting for June 20th, 2024. Can I get a roll call, please?
Fair.
Here.
Mr. Howell.
Here.
Ms. Bigger passed.
And then we have the minutes from our April 18th meeting. I will make a motion to approve the minutes.
I will second.
Thank you. Second by Mr. Ayer. Roll call.
Mr. Capel.
Yes.
Mr. Ayer.
Yes.
2 yeas.
All right. Now I am woefully uninformed on this agenda. I will warn you, Daryl, and I'm sorry.
That's okay.
So
We're ready for it.
we'll go to new business, and we have special events permit guidance for electricity.
All right. So we have, or Mr. Bennett is with us this evening, this afternoon. Is going to probably speak to this issue a little bit more from his perspective. But to kind of tee that up, I just wanted to let the committee members know that we've had a lot of discussion about electricity on the square. In your packet, we've included the current special event permit policy. And I want to draw your attention then to page 6. It's the very last sentence or paragraph in the policy. So we have the policy and then we have an application form. So the policy does include a paragraph on power on the square. And I'll just go ahead and read it because it's important, I think, and will come into play as Mr. Bennett speaks to this issue. So events on the square requiring the use of power must receive prior approval from the city before any vendor is permitted to connect to an electrical box. So we've got boxes on 2 corners down here. Actually, we've got 3 corners. The only one we don't is the one near the gazebo, although we do have some additional electricity up there now. We don't have a box, though, what we might consider a full-scale electrical box. But so in order to be prior to connecting to that, again, work with the city, and generally we're working with the event organizer. If power is not approved or available for an event, although it has always been, I don't want to suggest it won't be, and generators are needed, the event organizers will coordinate with city staff on the use of temporary power, which may require the use of silent generators. And that's important point because before we didn't really say what kind of generators. So we've got a new policy. And then the city may impose additional requirements regarding the use of power on the square. Okay, so every event organizer gets this application. That's the policy. And then as we consider the applications that are in the back of the packet, I'll just kind of, for example, if you go to packet page 15, this is one of the applications that's come in. It asks questions regarding electricity and use. And in this particular case, the use of city electricity is for special events, very limited, and maybe a reason for the denial of the request. Will this event require the use of city electricity? So they're telling us in advance whether it does or does not. Will the event include the use of generators? This one doesn't have an answer to that. The other application does and basically says no. But if so, how many generators? So again, we get a sense of kind of how much power is going to be needed on the square and whether or not the existing power that we have will accommodate the needs. So the point is we're trying to at least understand before the event begins what the electricity needs are going to be so we can try to manage that a little bit more effectively. Having said that, doesn't always work perfectly. So I think Mr. Bennett wanted to kind of share some thoughts on his observations regarding the Memorial Day event, kind of around power, just kind of how it unfolded. So his on packet page 7 are some his notes from his observations.
Yeah, I sent this on ahead. I'm sure everybody read it several times at least, but I'll read it again. Stop me if you need to. This is basically, most of you probably know that power on the square, basically to eliminate generators, has been my pet project for several years now. Now, last year, the city finally upgraded the electric to the point where it should not be required for generators to be used. But with that, I'm just going to kind of paraphrase what I read here. I think you all have this, but I'm just going to run through it and then we'll see if there's any questions. Stop me in the middle if you'd like to. So this past Memorial Day, I'm just using it as an example because it's probably fresh in everybody's mind. There were 2 generators in use. One of them for the taco truck, fortunately, was a silent one. And because of that, I should have talked to them, but I did not because it wasn't a problem. The one that for me at least was, and probably for a lot of people here, the bounce house area, the kids' inflatable rides, was using a generator to power their fans. And I'm going to read this. They were running off a very noisy generator, which was running 2 or 3 inflation units. This generator was less than 100 feet from our main power panel. And there is plenty of power there, and all they would have needed were a couple of medium duty extension cords for each of their fans. I asked the volunteer operator why they didn't just plug in, since the rides were so close to the pedestal. And she responded that the last time they plugged in, they blew all the breakers. And I followed up with a few questions, and turns out that she thought that was at least 2 years ago. So I asked her, since she really was not an official of any kind, to put me in touch with the officials, the band officials who were the organizers this time. And I was told by them, and I'm not saying this is correct, but this is just what they told me, that they'd never received any notifications that power was available, and had been repaired from years past. And I think I have heard that story in the past from a couple of different organizations. So there's a communications gap somewhere. They went on to observe that it would have been nice to have known, since they paid a rental fee of $100 for the generator, which they didn't need. So this seems to indicate that event coordinators, and therefore the vendors, are either not getting, not reading, or not understanding the information that the city is giving them. Yeah, I mean, if you take it at face value, if they paid $100 to rent that generator, I can well believe that maybe they didn't know. But is that because they didn't read what they were given, or because they weren't given it, or they didn't understand it? I don't know. I didn't dig in. That's not really my job to do that. I'm a fact finder. I don't know what official policies have been created. I mean, I did some really in-depth studies on noise levels and types of generators and all that stuff. And Mr. Hennessy has all that if you need to go back and refer to it again. But it sounds like that's all been included in the packages from what you just told me. So it's not getting where it needs to get. Anyway, I will be happy to assist with any of this if you would like me to. If not, I won't.
Yeah, so thank you, Barry. So to that point then, so Amber generally receives the applications. I don't know, do you recall any direct conversation regarding with this particular vendor?
Yes,
This
they
particular
actually reached
event
out about
organizer?
specifications regarding what plugs they needed to hook up. Because I wasn't sure, so I had to ask him to verify it, because I didn't realize it was just a regular.
So somebody asked.
And I had let them know if needed, we have extension cords on hand.
Yeah, that was the other thing I was gonna add. So one of the things we've done then as a city is we thought, well, let's get some extension cords. If somebody shows up, doesn't have power, or doesn't have the right connection, maybe we can help them get connected. So we've got that. Again, it's not, again, we're working with the event organizers. It's not perfect yet. But this is a great example again, where the communication is not getting all the way through either the event organizers or all the way to the vendor. A lot of events have the inflatable,
A lot of them
games.
have the bounce house
So,
things,
maybe we need to we've been pretty focused on food trucks. Maybe we need to be a little bit more focused on some of the other activities that are going on the square as well. So, but anyway.
I don't know. You don't want to come in as the big bad ogre and tell them they got to turn their bounce house off. That's what do you do after the fact?
So I say all of that to say kind of here's where we are, and that's just so the committee understands where we are. We will, I think, maybe make this just more of a point from a staff perspective to make sure that we're communicating and documenting maybe that communication. And making sure that it's clear it applies to basically all the vendors, not just the food vendors, because again, I think we've been a little bit more focused on the food vendors. And see where we go from there.
Yeah, and at some point, I guess it gets to be a burden on the staff, because I suppose somebody could have run some extensions cords out to them at any time, but who's around to do that. You know?
Yeah, I mean, it's all happening on a holiday event. I mean, staff isn't always around.
At that point, it shouldn't be required. That should have all been headed off by whoever's organizing the event. Should have been more on top of that, but they're not. And I'm just kind of bringing it to your attention. Should I go on to my next quick topic?
No, not yet.
Okay.
Have a seat. We'll invite you back up. So the other thing I was going to add for this group, I'm not sure that the two of you would know this, but we did ask AEP for some pricing to install a fourth pedestal on this corner up here near the gazebo. Because what happens is for these events, you'll have trucks kind of extending the full length, and getting all the way back to the pedestal here is not always possible or practical. Certainly with Sizzle, you've got vendor trucks on both sides of the road, so that, there's a lot of demand. There's definitely a lot of demand along Granville Street. So I think where we are with that is we have received a document from AEP asking us to basically agree to an easement to allow them to install and then gain access to it if they need to repair it. Easements are the types of things we'll work through and get sent to council, because it's not something the committee would, just nod at. It won't be inexpensive, so we'll still have to determine whether or not we want to spend that money to do that. We did spend money last year. I can't really remember the price, but I want to say, I think it was less than $5,000.
It was 6 or something.
Yeah, it was around that number to fix the pedestals that are out there now and to add some additional power down here near the gazebo. So we've definitely gone in the right direction. We're not all the way there, but mostly wanted you to know where we are and what I think are kind of the next steps. So
if I could say something. Sure. Are the vendors that come in, are they given a form like the Delaware Health Department gives every food vendor that you cannot have this, you must have this, you must have that? Are they given are all the vendors?
yeah, I mean, that would be something we would expect the event organizer to do.
Who is the event organizer?
Yeah, so they end up being different organizations, but kind of give her a sense of who the organizations are.
For the Memorial Day market, that would be the big one at Music and Band Boosters. 4th of July, that's the Chamber of Commerce, and the Civic, but the Commerce, I can't talk today. The Commerce says the market on the square. Nancy's very well knowledgeable about this. She's been through it and at the events meeting. So I do try to make sure when I send the application they're filling out, I send the policy as well. And then it's their responsibility to read through it and realize what they need. And then when they come back to me with questions, I make sure I send an email so they get the specifics. So
I think it's every vendor's responsibility to read through the do's and don'ts and cans. And if they come here and they need an extension cord, it's great that the city has an extension cord. It's great, but it's not really that easy to throw out an extension cord, because now you got to worry about somebody tripping over the extension cord. So if they don't come prepared, then they don't get to play, is how I see it, really. And you have somebody maybe coming around who maybe from the school on this one or from the city to check if each vendor, like the health department, is up to snuff. And if they're not, then word will get around, for this event, you have to have this.
I agree completely. I was just looking through the application and the policy here, and I don't see anything calling out specifically the line items that a vendor might need if they're running a powered service or a water fed service, or what kind of utilities they might have to tap into. So I think it'd be good to call that out ahead of time in the documentation, so that when they sign that agreement, they're signing that they understand they can only have 120 power, one hookup, or whatever is decided is appropriate. And then we would also know what the needs are of each vendor that are coming in. Like, write down what you actually need as far as connections, and then we can determine where they need to be placed and how many of them you can have. I agree completely though, yeah.
And then the other item, which these, if we spend money to put more electrical boxes out on the square, and I know all these, the 3 events on the square don't get filled up like they used to. But they are bringing in more electrical needs, and like Sizzle brings in a lot of out-of-towners. I guess we would have to decide, is the square an appropriate place? Could it be moved maybe to the field that's over near behind the library? Where there's a graduated hill, have the bands down at the bottom, you could have seating on the gradual hill. I don't know, but you would have to make, I mean, that would be a permanent decision, as those markets or the events will remain on the square.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, we're trying to do a little bit better job of organizing events. You know, we've created some additional standards that weren't in place a year ago. We've certainly talked to the event organizers about, you know, maybe thinking differently about the way these events occur. Everybody does want to be on the square. I get that. But maybe every event doesn't need to be on the square. I think we also get that too. So, I mean, I think it's worth us encouraging, maybe, you know, a little bit more diversity in terms of the use of the spaces, around the city. So I doubt Sizzle's going to move, but,
I was gonna say Sizzle and the 4th of July parade seem like the ones least likely.
yeah,
to go
probably
anywhere
not
else.
going to move, but
But yeah, it'd be nice if the city helped foster more events in more different
Yeah,
spaces.
yeah.
Maybe J.R. Smith would be a
Right.
good place after it's
Right.
got its renovations.
Yep.
Or even out at GRE. That, because I know a lot of people come from those communities and they would have to take the bus in and the bus out, and it might give them a little bit more exposure or something closer to their neighborhoods.
Mhm.
well, I will say the other thing that maybe we've discovered over the course of the last year and a half or so, though, is that there are a fair number of events occurring elsewhere in the city. There's a lot of interest in the disc golf course. I mean, there have been a lot of events going on out there that I think we're only just beginning to understand everything that's going on out there.
It's
And and GRE, at least it's used early on for the Easter egg hunt. I don't know if, and then there's a summer,
Summer kids,
summer, yeah,
and the 5Ks take place there.
in the 5Ks, yeah,
The meeting
Forgot about
place.
that.
yeah. So a little bit, I mean, it's already kind of spreading out a little bit, but yeah, J.R. Smith Park would probably offer maybe a different opportunity than it had in the past, so. Okay, thanks.
Do we have any kind of guess what the cost would be for that additional?
We did get an estimate and I can't remember for the life of me. It's more than 6,000.
Sure.
Yeah, he also transformer. Cost,
Yeah,
but building a box out that consists of the others, I'm gonna take a while, yes, to buy and set up.
Yeah, I do think having power hookups everywhere we can reasonably put them is building for the future when it comes to these
Basically,
events.
it's okay, what you have on the southeast, the Banko Slow, we can locate that on the go in.
Because there's so many outlets, how do you plug into a box like
There's
that?
outlets and there are also, there's outlets for 110, like you plug an extension cord into 20 amps each, and they're with one plug per outlet, so they can't go out anymore.
Okay,
The other outlets are for 220 for a food truck to hook up, and they take a special plug or a special connection.
so would each vendor need to reserve an outlet?
So that's what the demo is.
yeah, I mean, that's one of the reasons why we said, yeah, work with the event organizers to figure that out, because if we realize we've got more than we have plugs, okay, then we need to start talking about how are you gonna do that?
Yeah.
Do you have a silent generator? Who's got the silent generator? That kind of thing. The other thing to note is that, at least for Sizzle, they do bring in auxiliary power, so even though we don't have a pedestal down on near the gazebo, there's extra power to accommodate those larger uses, so it hasn't been problematic, but. And when I think about the number, are there 3 down here and 1 down there, or 4 down here? And
There's 3 or possibly 4 down here for 220.
yeah,
1 down there.
for 220,
And there are 2 at each of the north pedestal, but those never get used.
they rarely get used. Yep. Yeah.
And then we're also looking at, as part of the earlier upgrade, which we didn't do yet, basically doubling the size of this main fence, putting in a box on like across the or something. But that's still a talking stage of the
Right.
So did you say there's electric on
There's electric on all four.
all four corners, but during a couple of these, they don't, two of them don't get used very much?
Well, the two on this road are pretty much too far away from here. You
Yeah.
know, close Granville on all the drugs there. And it would be impractical from the forward all the way over to the other side of the square.
What about the jump houses and the other things? Could they just spread stuff around the square?
They could, but they don't represent anything significant over the system. Very easy.
Yeah, that's one of the other things we did. We fixed the electrical connections that are on the outside of this building to accommodate those types of uses. And as Barry indicated, the boxes also allow for some 110 connections. So we've generally had enough power for that kind of use. It's really been the 220 power that's been the bigger challenge for us. So anyway. Okay. All right, that's where we are at power. Barry will invite you back up on these other topics in just a minute.
Yes.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. But let's talk about the 4th of July, the permit applications.
Okay.
And then, yeah,
Which one do you, well, do you want to start with the Independence Day celebration by the chamber? That'll be the
sure.
market.
Yep, whatever.
I think that's in there first. Obviously, the event takes place on July 4th with the setup, starting on July 3rd. They will be having the kids zone, chambers in charge of the food trucks this year. That'll be on Granville, with vendors. They're gonna have the hot dog eating contest and the pie contest. I'm still looking for someone to challenge me. I won last year.
The pie contest?
Yeah, so
It is pie baking, not pie
Yeah,
eating, right?
it's baking.
They had pie eating too. No, they had
Hot dog.
eating. Hot dog.
Their application has been reviewed by fire, police and EMS. I've had and services. No one has, given me any red flags. And on that morning, this has more to do with the parade, but we will be shutting down the parking on Columbus and on Cherry on the square side. So when the parade does begin, that's open for people and we don't have them running in and out between the cars.
That's a change from what we've
Yeah.
generally done.
And
So,
for the cleanup, she has hired an outside business to come in and do cleanup throughout the day and then a final one at the end. So
Cleanup's been banner. I don't know who does it in the past. but
Yeah.
When I walk in the morning, I'm amazed, really.
that's a lot. So there is that one. And then I don't think it has changed very much from the year before.
and then the other one just goes.
And then on packet page 19 would start the parade and fireworks application. Like we talked about, we are gonna change how they come through the square, not come through, how the residents will. We're gonna try to have more people at the corners where we get the crowding. And we're gonna do some rope barriers to just kind of give people a place like, hey, don't cross this line here. And then we've suggested that they have a little more volunteers throughout the parade route to help with just making sure the kids aren't running into the street. And the police chief and Deputy Chief Wade have talked about the end of the parade. We'll have the signs out at 6:05, correct? And then one out here for traffic. And then I think they're gonna bring it through a little slower this time when they let the traffic out. That parade will start at 10. She's got lots of parade applicants already.
Are they
Um,
throwing candy? Are they allowed to?
They're allowed to throw candy. The drivers are not allowed to throw candy. But as long as, and we're asking that you just give it the best you got and try to get it off the street. So
Yeah, we probably, we should share with the members
the video.
well, no, I was gonna say the best practices, because we do have
I have
Some-
that. I can
Yeah.
upload that. I have.
that we give to the parade organizers that
Yeah.
kind of talks about these types of issues. But again, that's the type of thing we ask them to communicate to the participants. and by participants, the entries into the parade.
So those basically go over, the do's and don'ts of the parade, like the driver is 21 and over. Everybody that's on the float must remain on the float for the duration of the whole parade. The drivers can't throw the candy. All your safety stuff, you know, and to prevent, you know, we can do everything we can to prevent another incident. So we've been working.
Is that on a sheet or on a video? Did you say?
It's on a sheet. Joey Thomas and I have been working on a before you know video or know before you go video. That will kind of incorporate those practices, but we'll release that to the public. Just, hey, heads up, you know, if the candy's in the street, let it be, please.
Yeah.
So we're working on that. We're hoping to get that out by the end of next week. So we're pushing that through. And then the fireworks will take place at the Big Walnut Middle School. We've changed a little more what we're doing there safety wise. The service team is going to try to build a better barrier around the fireworks, just to prevent anybody from coming through that area. And we've talked about amping up a little more police presence, especially in that lower lot. We had some fireworks going off last year. We're working with the school right now to try to come up with a way to let people know, like, leave your fireworks at home, leave it to the professionals. Like, we don't need, because there was some issues last year with some damage to the turf on the field. So we're going to do our best to try to have security in those areas to keep people out.
So people ran out on the field last year and blew off their own fireworks?
It was a bottle rocket. I don't know. Did it come across probably and just land over there?
They were actually on.
Okay, well, there you go.
Ah,
But I talked to the Civic about it. They're in contact with Mr. Rucker, who is the athletic coordinator for the school. There's some custodial fees and stuff they're gonna pay extra for to have a little more help with keeping people off the field.
They did seem a little low last year.
I was far away, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think, I think that maybe the previous custodian had retired and that maybe there was a little bit of a lack of communication about that, the need to be there. And so, basically learned our lesson last year that we need to do a little bit more. The other thing that we have talked to the Civic Association about is some additional police presence, walking the grounds. That'll be an additional charge to the Civic Association to pay for special duty officers, but we think that that would be important, particularly in light of what happened last year. One other thing, and I think the police chief had mentioned this to me, they may take, I think they're going to take one of those, or those signs down at the end of the day, the electronic signs that basically say a parade is happening, you know, be patient or take another route. Take those down at the end of the day and position those at the entry to the school and basically say, you know, leave your fireworks at home or something like that. Just trying to, another way to communicate, not here.
Yeah.
There are other places to let off your fireworks.
Anywhere but here.
Not here. High Street might be a good example. No.
Oh,
High Street might be a.
High Street in Hartford actually is
Yeah.
that
Oh,
corner.
really good place.
But this is also passed through emergency services, fire and police. I've gotten no red flags or negative feedback from it. Everybody is on board and everybody is aware that these events are happening and they know what is going to be going on.
So as a general rule, we don't need we don't need a vote or anything. We just basically want, you know, concurrence that you understand the events happening and you know, if there's additional things you want us to communicate, let us know that. But assuming there's consensus to proceed, we will continue to proceed.
I think a lot of people would be very upset if we didn't give the go ahead.
That's
I wouldn't want to be you two.
Right.
okay.
All right. Good stuff.
All right, so maybe we could invite Mr. Bennett back up under the visitor section to cover a couple of other items related to events on the square.
I promise these will be quicker. One of them is parking on the grass. I'm just going to kind of paraphrase here. This is one of those philosophical questions that either the committee or the city or both have to answer. In years past, antique vendors are the ones that have brought the crowds out. This past event was charging or requesting a $100 fee for any vehicle to park on the grass. So this is kind of going to get into whether the city or the events committee wants to micromanage individual events or dictate certain conditions to all the events. But I can tell you absolutely that no antique vendor is going to pay that, which means we will not be getting any antique vendors if that stands. I suppose there's a subtopic here, which has to do with vehicles damaging the square. Not an expert on that, and I'm not the guy who has to fix it, but I will say that in the past, some damage has been done, not enough that it required heavy equipment to fix. I would think maybe even a roller would fix it, but I don't know that. And I talked to Mr. Hennessy briefly about this, to where it would be okay unless there's a tsunami occurring at the time. But I don't know what you do if 50 vendors show up and it starts raining. You know, so that's something I'm just pointing it out as, I will just tell you that $100 charge for parking on the square is going to guarantee that you're not going to get many vendors to do that. The other problem with that actually is possibly even worse, because if you have 50 vendors coming for an event and they're not allowed to park on the square, that means they're going to park somewhere else. So that's 50 less parking spaces for the public. So it's just something else to consider with that one. I'll lend you my roller if you want me to.
Excuse me one moment. I have to agree with Barry. I mean, these things have been going on for 50 years. And we did always park the vehicles on the square in their little designated spot.
Yeah.
And that's how, and it was really no damage to the square. I mean, if anything.
It can, but you know, maybe it's the cost of doing business. I don't know why that changed. I did have my last paragraph here was that there was some discussion on this several meetings back, either here or at council, and I don't recall how that wrapped up, but maybe I'm just requesting maybe we revisit that. And only I can finish up real quick. Or
Yeah, do that.
The final topic has to do with, and again, I'm not going to read this one to you. Institutional memory as far as events that has been lost. Events come and go, event organizers come and go sometimes. And I think this last one was a good example. You got people who just don't know how to put an event this size together. So I'm suggesting maybe, again, the city or the committee look at some kind of way to, okay, here's how you do an event. I put a few here, charge admission or don't charge admission, rope off the square, don't rope off the square. How to block the road without damaging existing business. Oh, with this one I did want to mention. Granville was closed a few hours early on this past event without anybody telling anyone. And because of that, the antique shop had to close their doors. So I don't know how that happened. I'm just throwing it out there. How to contact vendors, what to charge vendors and stuff like that. Those are things that nobody knows unless they've done it. And it might be an interesting study to have us put together something along those lines. And it would be a living document. And it would be updated and changed and grow. And I will help in any way I can. If my speech was too long, you let me begin. Don't do that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Barry. So maybe just circling back a little bit to the parking on the square. So this has been a topic that the committee's talked about a little bit over the last year. So I will say that we have been particularly, well, I mean, we're certainly conscious of trying not to damage the turf. Not that we don't damage the turf. We certainly there's some damage done to the turf when the vehicles are on there. But in this year, as dry as it's been of late, it was pretty darn wet right up to the week before the memorial event. In fact, I thought we were going to get an inch of rain the night before the event, and which really probably would have changed who could have been on the square at that particular point in time. So I think we've sort of left it at the notion that that needs to be a call between the event organizer and city staff, leading up to the event. We did alert, I think, the event organizer that this may be an issue because we saw the weather. So we were working closely with them on it. They weren't overly concerned, but mostly because they didn't think there would be a lot, mostly because they were charging this additional charge, which I think was, well, it was certainly news to me. I'm not sure if it was news. Was it news to you?
I knew they were charging a fee, but I
Yeah.
didn't, I guess
Yeah.
I assumed it was like $25.
It used to be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
So,
didn't, yeah.
so anyway, so that's where we've left it. Basically, the event organizers and city staff, coordinate leading up to the event to determine whether or not it's going to cause excessive damage to the turf. Fortunately, that hasn't happened, at least for the last couple of years for these events. The other thing I will say is that we have been talking to a horticulturalist. I wouldn't say he's the city's horticulturalist, but he's the one we use whenever we have issues. One thing we do want to be conscious of is driving vehicles over, the roots of a tree and what impact that can have for compacting the soil and damaging, potentially adversely affecting the tree long term. So one of the things that you may notice here pretty soon is that the service staff is going to start putting some more tree rings around, mulch rings around the base of the trees, so that when we do have vehicles on the square, we're trying to encourage them to get a little bit farther away from the tree roots. Not that, well, they'll be 100% away from them, but we'll get them farther away. So I do think that's a good precaution to kind of help preserve the trees long term. So driving on the square isn't just about damaging the turf. Again, it can have an impact on the trees as well. And so that's what we try to be a little conscious of. So.
I got another question.
Sure.
I've been away from it when you set up, so I'm not familiar. But when the vendors come in now,
Mhm.
how do they unload on the street and they walk to their specific square that they've rented?
They're doing it in different ways, but I think the way this one worked is you had to pay in order to drive on to even drop off your stuff. To access the square, which so most of them I think were basically carrying them from a parking spot onto the square into their location. I know for the Sizzle and Sounds, I help with the vendor organization there. We do allow them to drive on, drop it, and then leave, but we're trying to manage the vehicles again to make sure that it's safe, because you got a lot of activity going on and you want to be careful about that. The 4th of July, do you know how she does it? She meaning
I do
the
know.
chamber.
I know Memorial Day, they like to bring them up the sidewalk and then over and out, but then I saw people coming up. They
Yeah.
usually will come up on Millway and backwards. Yeah, on this side over here, because the whole curb is flat, or they'll come up the sidewalk driveway.
Yeah. So they're doing it different ways, I guess is the point. We don't have a consistent policy on that.
That's how it used to be. You used to
Mhm.
come up this sidewalk and then really one person would take each individual car to where they had to go.
Mhm.
So there was kind of a pathway around to get to the quadrants of the square.
That would be another great thing to put in this knowledge base, because when we did Memorial Day, we copied you guys that had done it before, and we did just that. For our guys in their spot at that time, parking with their booth,
Mhm.
but they would not be unescorted throughout wherever they want.
Right. That's how it used to be.
Yep. All right, good point. Let's skip that. Okay, good feedback. Thank you. All right, I think that is it from staff's perspective, unless the committee's got anything else.
I was kind of interested about Barry's last point there about preserving policy and preserving best practices. And I don't know if it's enough for a whole subcommittee or something to handle, but I definitely think as the city grows, most cities have an event coordinator staff of some type, right? So maybe taking a step that could be like a preliminary type of idea where use some folks with some event management background to develop a plan for it. And I'd be happy to help with that. I have a background in event management too, so.
I did forget to mention, I honestly saw Teresa, she is 100% in favor of the whole too.
An event, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
One person kind of for all the, I think that's a good idea.
I keep my eye on the postings sometimes to see what all's out there in other communities.
Mhm.
I believe I've seen event coordinator positions in other cities before. Probably Westerville's and New Albany's, not Sunbury's, but
I was gonna say Westerville has one.
yeah. But, you know, in lieu of having full-time employees that we can throw at it, maybe, forming a group together to develop a strategy, a policy, and a Bible, so to speak, of how to do it.
Yeah.
It's a good idea.
Maybe if it's a volunteer position, maybe it would be from a small company and they could blast their company's name out as the coordinator, as the event coordinator, so-and-so with so-and-so, call that number. Maybe.
Yeah, I'd say, we've inched a little bit in that direction with Amber and the role that she
Mhm.
plays. I mean, she is the one communicating with every event organizer, reviewing every application, but I don't think we're capturing, you know, in a written way what we're talking about here. So we can definitely do better.
Mhm. All right, we've gone through everything, haven't we?
Yep.
All right, does anybody have anything for the good of the group then?
And one more thing, is the city expected to do anything on the 4th of July? Or the council, or, because I'm unaware.
Oh,
Well, I don't know. Are you guys organizing?
I don't think we have anything specifically planned. Usually council does a float. I have heard this year that folks with children, their children don't want to ride on the float and throw candy. They want to watch the parade and receive candy. And I know Cindy has some older ones that want to be on different floats, you know, for activities and stuff they're doing. So I don't honestly know if the council as a whole is planning on doing one again this year or taking a break year. It is kind of a hassle,
Yeah.
if I'm being honest. But we just need to get a consensus on that and decide if everybody wants to do one or not.
Or if you're having a booth with different shifts, you know, I don't know, but I haven't, so you got, keep me posted.
I don't
I will
know,
be here for that one.
I don't know what has been done prior, because we've done a float for the last 4 or 5 years, I think, and I have no idea.
Oh, city council has?
I'm not doing a kissing booth though.
Do
Darn it.
What did you say, Amber?
a dunk tank to raise
Dunk
money
tank.
for the parks. Okay.
We did, wasn't somebody in the dunk tank last year, or was that, did they? Was it,
Yeah.
was
gonna
it
say-
mayor? Was it?
Was it
I think
Tommy?
yeah, I think so.
I was gonna say, I bet you could get Joe to sit in a dunk tank too. I would be surprised if you wouldn't.
Mayor, and then you somebody gave him a break every now and then. Folks.
Mayor Sunbury, Mayor Galena,
Police chief.
Police Chief. Oh, yeah.
Fire inspectors.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I like it all. Anything else? Very productive meeting today. So I will make a motion to adjourn.
I will second.
Roll call?
Mr. Capel?
Yes.
Mr. Air?
Yes.
2 yeas, we are adjourned.
Question was.